Okay, all right. Good evening. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order, and for all those who can't...
Recording in progress.
And we are... Okay, great. And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Stroh, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call vote. We don't have Brittany tonight, so I'll go ahead and do the honors. Mr. Bishop?
Here.
Mr. Strout?
Here.
Mr. Esco?
Here.
Chairman Dewar is here, and Town Manager Hutchinson.
Here.
And Mr. Boyle is absent. Okay. Public address to the board. This is the time when the public may address the board on any item listed on the meeting agenda or on any issue or matter of the town. If you intend on addressing the board at this time, we ask that you do the following. Please identify yourself by name, address, or the company institution you represent. Public address to the board segment will last no longer than 30 minutes. Please make your comments concise and try not to repeat statements made by others. Please address your comments to the board chair. Discussion or debate on any issue may not take place at this time. The chair or the designee may answer questions on procedural matters. Please be cordial and respectful of others. If anyone wishes to be recognized when the board discusses an agenda item, please make that request at this time. The board chair may grant this request, and again, address comments to the board chair and be concise. We are meeting in person and making this meeting available via Zoom for the convenience of the public. Since we're meeting in person, we will not be responsible for any technical difficulties, so if you'd like to be sure of participating, please try to attend in person. Anybody want to address the board this evening? Yes, ma'am.
Maureen Mitchell, 1099 North Street. I'm a member of the Council on Aging Board, and I also was a member of the original building committee for the senior center. And when you get to item number 9 on your agenda, in reference to the vote in terms of cost of the construction options, I disagree with your option number 3, which daylights the stream and through the senior center property. It also destroys the proposed 5 or 6 building lots that were set up for that empty space that you want to make a retention basin. So I don't believe your dollar figures that you have in your upcoming chart reflect the potential sale of those lots and a potential site for, say, a public safety building, like for fire or police. So please don't go with the cheapest option. There's some ramifications your very nice report covered, but I know some of the things that are buried under there that that open stream would destroy.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Anyone on Zoom raising their hand? I don't see anybody. Okay. Great, thank you. Appointment ratifications. Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes, I'm,
Oh, I skipped the minutes. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Minutes for July 11th, 2022. Is there a motion to accept?
Make a motion to accept July 11th, 2022 minutes as presented.
For a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Motion. Okay, Mr. Stroud abstains. Okay. Mr. Atkinson, number 6.
yes, very pleased to present for your ratification Lee Nunez for Assessor's Clerk, effective October 17th, pending his pre-employment physical. The assessors were very impressed with his knowledge and eagerness to learn more about the assessing trade, and I'm very pleased to be able to present him for your present his appointment for your ratification. If you'd like to say a word or two.
Yeah, come on up, Lee.
Hi.
Okay.
Thank you. I look forward to working with everyone here and learning what the assessing office does here in Dalton.
Great. And let's see, is there a motion?
Sure. I make a motion to appoint Lee Nunez as the assessors clerk effective October 17th, 2022, pending a pre-employment physical.
Is there a
Second.
motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Congratulations, Lee. Now, we have a bad habit of doing group photos when we get somebody new to the team, so you gotta come up and have a group photo. Come on, guys, do that thing. I know that our folks in the press always give me a hard time if I don't do this, so. Yeah. Let's see.
You can't get on that chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Doug, move forward. Okay. All right, we all just kind of stand in the group. We got a photo over here. I don't know who we're looking at. All right.
Right.
Awesome. Lee, congratulations. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right, next appointment. Let's see, committee appointment ratifications.
Yes, you all know Tom Irwin, as a member of the, current member of the Green Committee. He is wanting to branch out in order to get a better perspective of how some of these committees relate to each other, and has volunteered, as you see, to be both on the Stormwater Management Commission and on the Waste Management and Recycling Committee. He's already offered to do some work for them earlier. Unfortunately, I guess he can't be here tonight, so I will offer his name, his appointment for your ratification.
Great. If I can have a motion on the Stormwater Management Commission?
Sure. I make a motion to appoint Tom Irwin to the Stormwater Management Commission effective October 12th, 2022 through June 30th, 2025.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. And then a motion for the Waste Management and Recycling Committee.
I make a motion to appoint Tom Irwin to the Waste Management and Recycling Committee effective October 12th, 2022 through June 30th, 2025.
Is there a second? Motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Irwin. Next is Mr. Walter for the Dalton Council on Aging.
Yes, unfortunately, Mr. Walter was unable to be present tonight, but I believe you all know him, and we're glad that he's becoming involved in this side of town affairs.
Great.
So again, very pleased to offer his appointment for your ratification.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to appoint Ken Wallow to the Dalton Council on Aging effective October 12th, 2022 through June 30th, 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Walter. Next one, for the ADA Committee.
Yes, you remember the Barones visited last couple of weeks ago, and both volunteered to be on the committee. I find it more useful, I think, for the long-term interest of the town that there be a diverse, as diverse a group of people as possible on such a committee, and on committees in general. So I offered one position, and Dr. Barone accepted that, and so I am here to ask for your ratification of his appointment.
Is there a motion?
Sure. And I make a motion to appoint Dr. Anthony Barone to the ADA Committee effective October 12th, 2022 through June 30th, 2023.
Second. Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Barone. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Mr. Irwin. Dr. Irwin? Hello, nice to see you. Great. And Dr. Irwin, thank you we just appointed you as well to 2 committees, so you weren't here, we gave you more work to do.
We actually
So-
we added 2 more.
We added 2 more.
Yeah, 3 more on top of it.
Yeah, we put you in 3 extra ones.
Yeah, so thank you for stepping up into those two positions. Appreciate it.
Any questions in that regard at all?
No, we'll just give you more, we gave you more assignments while you're not here, so.
I just want to throw in as a comment that the drive to do that is all consistent with the mandates for the Green Committee.
Yeah.
So I feel that I can pull together a better Green Committee plan through exposure on both of those committees. Of course, on the Waste Management and Recycling Committee, there is a chair designated for a Green Committee member. So that was already part of the understanding of the town. But I think that since the municipal vulnerability plan also hinges on the stormwater, that understanding that as well is going to be important.
Great.
So,
Great, thank you again.
sure thing.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Next is the BRPC ADA self-evaluation and transition plan presentation. Mr. Hutchinson, you want to kick us off here?
Yes, you may know that the town of Dalton engages the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission to work on our community development block grant programs. New to that program, or relatively new, I believe, aside from their housing rehabilitation program, is an ADA, an Americans with Disabilities Act self-evaluation and transition plan process. Going through this process helps the town identify various barriers to participation from anyone with a variety of disabilities covered under the ADA. So we now have a draft of that report, and Patricia Mullins here, director of that program, is here to introduce that report to you. The committee will review it and offer some suggestions. It will come back as a final draft. We can file that with the Mass Office on Disability and become eligible for their grants. So that's another reason to go through this process.
Great, and just before we start, I just want to introduce members of our ADA committee, because it's a newly formed committee, right? So we have Alyssa Machino, Dr. Barone, who just appointed this evening, and then Lynn Clements, who's in the back there. Did I miss anybody else?
Doran Middlebrook is on Zoom.
And Doran, oh, great, excellent. So we have a contingency of that committee, so certainly as we go through the presentation, if there's questions, feel free, okay? So, great. And who's presenting this evening?
Pat Mullins.
Pat Mullins, all right, excellent. Over to you, Pat.
Hi, I'm Patricia Mullins, and I'm here with Christy Lewis, who is a grant specialist at BRPC. And we did a lot of the work together and had some other assistants out in the field in order to put this report together for you. So you may have seen us wandering around, taking pictures here, there, and everywhere. And then we put the report together. Alyssa has a copy of our PowerPoint, and I'm hoping somebody's going to start it. Alyssa?
Did you email it to me, Pat?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Christy emailed it. Yep.
Hold on.
Okay.
I can do it if you want to share the screen.
You want to try to go ahead and see if you can share it? I think we made it so you can share.
There you go. Perfect, we can see it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Okay, Christy's going to advance these slides for me, and we usually work pretty well in tandem, but we'll see if she gets ahead of me or whatever. But so, as Mr. Hutchinson described, we have been able to do this ADA self-evaluation and transition plan for the town of Dalton due to funding from the Community Development Block Grant. The FY20 grant was something that we applied for quite some time ago, really closer to FY, back in 2020. We really didn't know for certain when we were going to get this grant, and at that time, we knew that the town needed to create a self-evaluation and transition plan because it's really been mandated by the state that every town have one. They didn't necessarily fund that mandate, but it is strongly recommended that every town have an ADA self-evaluation and transition plan, and that it certainly enhances the town's ability to get other grant funding, not just for things that are related to ADA, it's always helpful to have plans in place that demonstrate the town's commitment to improving in this area. So CDBG funds is how this was funded. And basically, a self-evaluation and transition plan is as Mr. Hutchinson actually described, is something that we do, that a town can do in order to just make themselves aware of the situation that they have in terms of ADA accessibility in their town. I have been asked by numerous people over the last few years, how each town might compare to the next, and I have to say that most of the communities are, not really up to ADA standards, because town halls and other town facilities were usually built, quite some time ago. It's very rare to find a brand new town hall anywhere, a brand new police station, or any of the other facilities that we're going to discuss here today. Most of them were built quite some time ago, and certainly before there was a great deal of awareness or consciousness about ADA accessibility. So Dalton is way ahead of the game in the sense that there's been a growing awareness of the topic, and there have been some efforts made in the town to bring their facilities up to date to ADA standards, but there's still a long way to go. So the whole point behind this is to become self-aware. It's a self-evaluation. The town is trying to become self-aware of the current situation, and then figure out what their priorities are going forward, and how to pursue the improvements that are needed. We looked at the town hall, the police station, the senior center, the highway garage, parks and playgrounds, and essentially we worked with the town to get a list of town-owned properties. So these are the properties that we looked at throughout the plan, and we also looked at streets and sidewalks as well in the downtown Dalton area. Okay, Christy, I think we're ready. So sure. Oh, you skipped one.
I did.
Okay. So the question is, why should you create an ADA self-evaluation and transition plan? And that is because, as we've said, the state of Massachusetts is strongly encouraging, if not mandating, every community to do so. But in addition, what we would like people to think about is that the ADA law, which came into effect in 2010, is really a civil rights law. And it has been implemented on a national level in order to encourage communities to think in terms of all residents being enabled to take advantage of all the town services and recreational opportunities, and of course at the federal level, all the federal services and recreational opportunities, and it behooves the state to also support that. So in completing the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan, it does enhance the community's opportunities for other grant applications being approved. So Christy's a little bit ahead of me again. So the three basic steps that the town has to take in order to be in compliance, ADA compliance. The first is designation of an ADA coordinator, and the town of Dalton has taken that step and has named Alyssa. Alyssa, could you pronounce your last name, Alyssa? Machino, as the ADA coordinator for the town of Dalton. So that really means she's going to be the point person. It doesn't mean that she can implement all the changes that might need to happen over the next few years, but it certainly means that she's the person who's going to be gathering a lot of the information about how about what kinds of changes need to happen, and what just be the central person for information in terms of what the town is doing on any particular project that they've got in mind having to do with ADA improvements. The next step the town has to take is posting of an ADA notice. That basically means that the town needs to have an ADA policy, and they need to have it posted. So it needs to be established. We have provided, as part of this process, we've provided the town with a template that is being used by many communities across the state, and this template is in draft form, and it's something that the town can edit as they see fit. And that would be, I would think, part of the one of the duties of the ADA committee. And then along with that notice would be that there needs to be a posting of an ADA grievance procedure, so that if any member of the public, any employee of the town or member of the public has an issue that can't be resolved amicably, informally, then there is a grievance procedure in place for remedying that complaint. When we look at ADA accessibility, there's some things in the report that you might see the pattern emerging after you've looked at the report. There are 4 priorities, and these priorities are the lens that we are looking at all of the town's facilities through this lens. Priority 1 is accessible approach and entrance. If you can't get in the building, I'm not sure that 2, 3, or 4 make any difference at all. But essentially, number 2 is access to the goods and services inside the facility. Number 3 is access to public bathrooms. Number 4 is access to other items such as water fountains and other things that we all take for granted that if they exist, that we will be able to somehow or other use them, which is not always the case when someone has some accessibility challenges. So how do we determine accessibilities? In buildings and parks, we just want to get this down to very simple, basic way of looking at things. Can everyone get into and out of the building or the park? Can everyone get to the important services inside the building or the park? Can everyone access the restrooms and any other miscellaneous requirements that are part of the ADA, the 2010 ADA regulations? Have they been met? When it comes to access to town meetings and department services, we're looking at all of this based on what the access is to the buildings, and the departments are evaluated for available accommodations, policies, and trainings for employees. So when we're looking at, of course, for us, I think it's pretty clear that the town hall is the hub of the town and is probably the most important building for residents and even visitors to be able to access. So we're looking at municipal buildings and parks that the town owns. We're looking at recurrent accessibility barriers throughout those buildings. So I want to mention here that, for instance, if you are looking at the town hall, there's 2 entrances on the side of the building. The very main entrance, I don't believe anybody uses. But if you're looking at those 2 main entrances on the side of the building that people use day in and day out, one entrance has this flight of stairs, marble steps you can see going up. That obviously is not accessible to someone in a wheelchair, and to many people who maybe are not actually wheelchair bound but have other types of challenges in terms of mobility challenges in order to get in the building. And then there's another flight of stairs inside the building. I believe it's on both ends. That's the same end, isn't it, Christy? Yeah. I think that's, yeah. So while there are no stairs to access the second entrance, which you folks may think of as the police station entrance, but it's also the closest entrance to the room that you're in right now, there's no stairs on the outside of that. But once you get in, there is a flight of stairs. Then the picture on your lower right hand is the staircase going down into the police station. So at the entrance of the building where you approach the police station, and there are no stairs on the outside, there's a flight of stairs down to the police station and a flight of stairs up to the main floor of the town hall. And there is a lift that the town has provided there, which is apparently can be operated by a person in a wheelchair as long as they have use of their hands and are not somehow, having difficulty grasping, etc., and pushing buttons and can see. And as long as everything else is equal, they should be able to use that lift. So that is an example of something that the town has done in order to help remedy the situation. But again, if they can't get in the building in the first place, that's something that we still have to look at. In the bottom left-hand corner here, that is a set of stairs that is in the police station, and it's the only access to the bathroom in the police station. There's no other
holdings, where the holding cells are.
Right. Okay, I think we can move on, Christy. I think it's fair to say that we want to compare an inaccessible access with an accessible one. I think that can be done simply by looking at the town hall versus the new senior center, which is a brand new building, and it's a senior center, and it's a beautiful example of a fully accessible building. So I think if you need to compare what it should be, I think the senior center is a good example of what it should be. Again, there is some signage in the town hall on the main floor, including leading to the bathrooms. We're not convinced that signage is exactly what needs to, located in the exact position that it needs to be, and it doesn't include Braille, if I remember correctly. The bathrooms seem to be roomy, but when it comes right down to it, you couldn't actually get a wheelchair in there and turn them around, and they're not fully accessible. So, in the report, which is about 77 pages long, we detailed quite a few of the various characteristics of the town hall and the police station that basically demonstrate that it's not neither building or neither facility is ADA compliant for a number of reasons. And it's everything from the parking and the approach to the signage. There's no push button access at the doors. There's the ramp on the outside of the building. While it may appear to be accessible to the layperson, in actuality, it does not meet ADA requirements. Some of the priority areas at the town hall and the police station that need to be looked at, and there needs to be some consideration on how to either improve them or change or make accommodations, would be the parking. There is no truly accessible route to the main level of the town hall. The restrooms are not accessible. There's a problem with accessibility to services because, again, we tend to think in terms of the person in the wheelchair. There's many other types of disabling conditions that might make it difficult for a person, including visual and hearing and folks who are using canes or etc. But there is a problem with getting a wheelchair up to the service counters in the town hall. And this is something that I think could be addressed fairly simply, but it is going to take a little bit of it's going to take a little bit of design work and a little bit of construction to make that happen. There's no access at all to the second floor offices. There's no way to get up to the building and permit office or the health department on the second floor. And I believe there's some other offices, maybe the planning office is up there. I'm sorry, I have something here keeping me from seeing this. And especially in the police station, there's inadequate processing and holding in the cells at the police station. I don't want to elaborate on this too much, but we did tour the police station, and we did talk to the chief of police there, and the conditions there are not really accessible. Not really. Okay. All right. So when we looked at the parks, and we looked at Chamberlain Park and Pine Grove Park, again, what we're finding is that it doesn't mean that someone could not drive up in a handicap van and get out of that van in a wheelchair and get onto the park grounds. However, there's no actual accessible handicap parking. There's no accessible route to any of the facilities there. No accessible benches or tables. The playground surface material may be safety material in one park, but not the other. But in any case, it needs maintenance in both of them. There's no accessible route to the bleachers or to the concession stands. There's no ADA signage for the restrooms. So, what we really are seeing is that individuals with disabilities would have a very difficult time really enjoying their recreational opportunities at these two parks. So one thing that Christy and I really enjoyed was walking around downtown Dalton, which is really a charming town. And one thing we noticed right away is, in addition to the sidewalks on the main streets, there is a very nice effort there to have a village atmosphere with sidewalks off the main road and connecting some of the more important streets in downtown Dalton. Technically, these sidewalks are not ADA accessible, but it's wonderful you have them in the first place. And so I think, I think it's just important to note that every one of these little cracks that you see on these sidewalks would be enough to stop a wheelchair, including, if you could back up, Christy, including at the police station and town hall. If you can see where the sidewalk ends, and then there's this gravel patch, and then there's a couple of different types of pavement. There is a sloping area there that would allow somebody in a wheelchair to be able to slide out onto the street, but it's not exactly an ADA compliant ramp or anything like that. So it's, a lot of problems like this throughout the town, although it's wonderful that the sidewalks are there and the town is very attractive, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to walk it or be in their wheelchair and ride on it. But there's some obstacles there for folks. So obviously we looked at the town garage and some other minor facilities around the town, including the cemetery, etc. But we're finding the same type of obstacles everywhere within the town, and so these are the next steps that we suggest the town consider in moving towards ADA compliance. Some of this has already been started, so we're suggesting that there be a review of the draft self-evaluation and transition plan, and that the town gather input from the public. And I think that tonight's meeting is a step in that direction. When we put these recommendations in our report, we also included that, that the town department heads should be looking at this report as well, and providing any kind of input that they think we need. And we did get some input already, and realized that we had mislabeled the photograph in the report. So that's helpful because we want it to be as accurate as possible. We feel like a draft copy of the plan should be provided for public input. Maybe it's a little bit redundant, but down at the bottom we suggest that you put it on your town website. You could wait until you feel like it's a final plan before you do that. But if you presented it for a couple of weeks now and asked for some input, you might get some good comments from people. We feel like the select board needs to allow this process to happen and then accept the plan by a vote. We are also saying that we think you should create an advisory committee or a commission on disabilities, which you have already done. So you're ahead of the game there. We feel like the town should it's up to the town to decide what the highest priorities are. We might say that we feel like the town hall and the police station are the highest priorities for the town, but that really is up to the town to decide. But if there's going to be work on that building in any case, then the architect should be including all of these ADA improvements in his work. The town should consider providing ADA accessibility training for town employees. Now, we're saying that knowing that there's very little training out there, that it can be really tough to find anything very specific, but the Massachusetts Office on Disabilities is a website that is a resource for the town, and I have just today sent something to Alyssa that there will be a disability summit on October 27th that will be focusing on digital accessibility. So that's something that we haven't really discussed here tonight, but we have mentioned it in our report, and that is that there's all manner of disabilities and that people have to work around, and one of them would be in how the town handles phone inquiries and access to their website, because a lot of people may need some special assistance with that. And as far as we know, there are no accommodations at this time for that. So I think it would be worthwhile for some town employees to take the time to attend that summit and see what kinds of opportunities there are to resolve those issues. So that is an overview of the report. As I said, it's about 77 pages long. And again, we are looking at all of the facilities through the lens of those 4 priorities. And the main one being, can you get into the building, or can you get into the facility, or park, or whatever it might be. So that's where we feel like the town is right now. And I think there's a lot of opportunity through the Massachusetts Office on Disability to, there's some implementation grants out there, and once you have this plan in place, you will have the documentation that you need in order to be able to move forward and apply for other grants. So that's where we are. Does anybody have any questions?
Great, thank you. Let me open it up to the ADA committee members if there's any questions from the committee members. Dr. Brown?
Yeah, so with the digital accessibility, are you talking about areas where disabled individuals can come to access digital services, or with their ability to do that from their homes?
Yes, I think that some towns actually have websites that convert the information. So if a person has a visual disability, they might be able to log on and hear the information that they need. So, just for instance, information on meetings that are scheduled, etc. So, but to be honest with you, I don't know what else they can is out there. That is something to explore. It's something we plan to attend that summit as well.
Yeah, I can actually offer some insight into that because the Office of Civil Rights, through COVID and the move of telehealth within healthcare, Office of Civil Rights came out with a guidance last April, which really talks about not only if we're having like a meeting tonight to actually have transcription of the meeting of the conversation in real time,
Right.
or as Pat mentioned, is to take that content and then translate it into a larger visual screen or be able to read that information. And then we get into the access through conversion of English to foreign languages as well.
Would it be feasible to use the only structure that's ADA compliant as a way of access for those individuals at the time of the meetings? And it's kind of choppy based upon the translation from the Office of Civil Rights of how, like, if you offer it to one person, you have to make that same level of access available to all, and that could be a technical challenge and an operational challenge at the same time, right? So just trying to figure out how to navigate those waters. But yeah. Any other questions from ADA members? Any questions from the audience at all on what you learned? Ms. Clements?
I would just like to thank the folks who worked tirelessly to put this report together so that as a town we're able to access these grants so we can make the changes necessary to bring us up to code.
Yeah.
Because it's important for the townsfolk to realize that this is not a once and done project. This is a 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 year process.
Yeah.
This is an extended process that will be done over a period of time. We're not looking at, boom, we're done. This is not all coming out of your pocket today. This is federal grant money, state grant money. This is something that will be done, and a lot of it will be accessible thanks to these folks who have worked so hard on our behalf. So I just want to thank them from the bottom of my heart.
Great, thank you, Lynn. Any additional questions from
Thank you.
the audience at all? How about board members?
Yeah.
Mr. Bishop?
Yeah, should we include looking into the schools to get automatic door openers for the 3 schools in here? Because, I mean, there's far more people that go in and out of the school buildings. It's just not the kids. I mean, there's a lot of town meetings, there's sporting events, there's tournaments and stuff. There's a lot of people, like grandparents, come in there and stuff, and they have a hard time without those automatic door openers.
I can offer an update on that, because Ms. Clements actually raised that concern to the school building committee and the school committee, actually the building engineer, in May of last year after our annual town meeting. And since May, we have been advocating and pushing the school committee and the superintendent and the administration to put an automatic door push at the high school. There's one at Nessicus. There's not one at Craneville,
Okay.
but there's one at Neskis, but there's not one at the high school. And the initial response was the way that it was constructed, those doors meet ADA compliance because of the time they take the swing open is like 5 seconds. But if you're trying to get through on a walker or you have a service dog with you, it's a big of a challenge. So we actually have advocated and pushed and just got the news from Mr. Bueno a week and a half ago, I think, but the school building committee has authorized, it takes them that $2 million in unused funds to implement the push button at the high school. Because we were not going to support the new track request unless they deal with the ADA issue.
Okay.
So, yeah. But yes, so that's,
Okay.
yeah, a great point, Mr. Bishop. Yeah.
But Mr. Bishop, I'll believe it when I push it.
Yeah, so we're gonna continue to push on the push, right? So they said they're gonna do it, they approved it, now it's just implementation of that. Because our argument was, not only for our community members, Lynn, I love how you say it, how do you say different able body?
If the able-bodied can run, the differently able can walk.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and that new school, 7 towns, $72 million, a hub of all of our communities, needs to be much more accessible than it is today. So, yeah.
I do have one more thing I wanted to add, and that is that an ADA self-evaluation transition plan is considered something of a living document. So although you may at some point decide that we have the final version after we've done whatever edits might come from an exploration by the ADA committee, etc. Over the years, there are going to be some of these issues are going to get addressed through, suppose you have a complete streets project, or suppose there is some significant construction done on the town hall in order to remedy some other issue that might be going on. As you know, if you have construction that is valued at more than a third of the building itself, then everything has to come up to ADA compliance, which is right now you're in a grace period and everything. So over time, conditions are going to change. Some things will improve, but other things will be noticed that maybe were not addressed initially, and those things can be added. So it's considered a living document that you can update on your own from here on out. And, there may come a time when you want to redo the entire thing, 10, 15 years from now, but it's a document that once it's finalized and it's in your hands, you can update it as you move along so that it can continue to document the issues that you want to document and apply for grants. So in other words, if you decided that you wanted to apply for a community development block grant and you noticed that the item that you were hoping to address through CDBG wasn't specifically mentioned in here, it's perfectly okay for you to go in and add that. You can add to it.
Thank you, Pat. Any other questions from the board?
No, I don't have a question, but I have a statement. This goes along with what Mr. Esco said a few meetings ago when we were talking about when we were putting money into the town hall. He's looking at the overall picture of what's going to cost and what's going to be more, where we're going to get the more value for our money. We started looking at the deficits in the town hall and where we're going to spend our money as opposed to looking to the future about building another building, a newer, more modern, more user-friendly building. So I think that this needs to be included in those discussions.
I agree. Mr. Esco, any comments or questions?
I think this is a great report and really helps set the stage for continued improvements to accessibility for all the town facilities. And I'm excited to see what kind of grant opportunities might be available to help us do that. So,
Excellent, thank you, sir. I have a couple of questions. Pat, I'll address these to you. You mentioned that the law went into effect in 2010. Here we are in 2022, right? So, one is there a timeline for us to become in compliance with all your findings? Which leads me to a second question is, I didn't see in the document any type of cost estimates, either in general or predicted. And then third is, we mentioned the implementation grants, but any other funded mechanisms, because it's another one of those unfunded mandates, both federal and state, which I think we all agree with. But to Mr. Strout's comment, Mr. Esco's prior comments as well on our town hall, we are in the middle of a $750,000 investment in reconstructing or handling our third floor because of asbestos, and we kept ourselves under that line, if you will, of then tripping into the ADA compliance because we knew if we ended up going to an elevator, we were not going to be able to afford it, period. So when we look at our issues, we're really going to rely heavily on the ADA committee to prioritize those and maybe back in from grant availability to then plan. Because what I want to avoid is putting a plan in there and no idea of cost. We have a master plan from 2016 that there's still work to be done, but it's really that cost factor and how to navigate that strategic planning, right?
Well, in terms of the timeline, there is no deadline for this. I think you're absolutely correct. Certain actions that the town might take might trigger a requirement that you meet the ADA requirements. Right now, you don't have to because I don't like to use the term grandfathered, but that's essentially the situation. The building was built quite some time ago, before this was ever really on anybody's mind. And it's the building that you have to work out of, and I think that that's well understood by the Commonwealth, that the towns, not just Dalton, but the towns are not going to have the ability to completely reinvent themselves in order to comply with this. But if you do major renovations on the building, you may trigger some other code requirement that would make you have to address these things. On the other hand, I think there's a lot of small improvements that could be made. One of the most, if a person manages to get inside the building, for instance, a person in a wheelchair, if they are inside the building, then one of the easiest things to fix would be the service counters, because if you're sitting in a wheelchair and you roll up to one of the service counters and your forehead doesn't even rise above the top of that counter, you can't see the person you're trying to, something like that. I think the town could probably figure that out, and it would cost some money, but it'd be a fairly minor thing to be able to address.
Fairly minor with high value, right? Yeah.
There could be some money coming through ARPA, or there could be funding, other types of infrastructure funding. We're really awaiting anxiously to see if there's any money for municipal buildings coming out of the infrastructure program. So we'll be on the lookout for those kinds of things. On your behalf, on any town that we've worked with, and we're aware of what their challenges are. We'll be looking for that, and we'll certainly try to give you a heads up if we see anything that is appropriate. But there's no specific timeline.
Okay, great, thank you.
The second thing about cost estimates, the issue with the cost estimate right now is that it isn't even possible to guess at the cost right now with the supply chain and the difficulties. The supply chain and the cost is just volatile right now. In order to actually have one of these projects, we'd have to have a design for it, first of all. So Brpc we don't have architects on our staff. You would need an architect to do your designs, and once the architect had a set of plans that could be bid out, you would then be subject to prevailing wage, etc. And with the way costs are just out of this world right now, that doesn't mean that they won't fall back down.
Yeah, I was more interested in seeing like a range. It could cost anywhere from $3 million to $10 million, that kind of stuff.
Right, exactly, right. And I think at this point, I do a lot of work right now even with housing rehab, and I can tell you, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the typical project is supposed to be $40,000, and our bids are coming in at $100,000.
Sure.
So I don't think you really want me estimating because I'm likely to estimate really too high.
Okay, thank you, Pat. I got a question from the audience, but I think I'm good on the questions I asked, so thank you.
Thanks.
Just an extension on your question about cost estimates and things. One of the specific areas, in fact, Mr. Strout kind of touched on this, is if we exceed a certain threshold, we're going to have to put an elevator in.
Right.
And the cost estimates that I heard on the elevator are ballparkish $500,000.
That's right.
So the question is to Patricia, how much of the $500,000 could we realistically hope we might have defrayed by grant monies of some form? Any or none, or?
I think that first of all, I think $500,000 is at the extreme low end of what it would actually cost. Many times, because of code requirements, actually unrelated to ADA, other code requirements, an elevator requires that a new addition be put on a building in order to house the elevator. Otherwise, you're going to be doing major renovations inside the building on pre-existing offices and etc. But in any case, I would say a new elevator is probably $1.5 million. And the reason I'm coming up with that estimate is because I recently worked with another community in Berkshire County through CDBG. We had the funds to do some design work, and that is the neighborhood of what it would cost.
I'll go for an elevator that's 1.5. It better serve me some Starbucks on the way up.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Pat. This has been very informative. We have a very big agenda, but I just want to make sure if there's any other questions. I know the ADA committee is going to take this now, Mr. Hutchinson, and go into more evaluation and detail and bring it back to the board later on for review. And Mr. Esco?
Oh, after you're done.
Okay. And then review that and then bring back some recommendations back to the full select board and go from there.
I was just going to mention that I think one of the priority areas that might not cost as much money would be accessibility at the parks, accessible parking even at the start. That couldn't cost too much money, but we would get a lot of value out of that improvement immediately. So maybe we could put that to the top of the list, just a suggestion to the ADA committee.
What are the low-hanging fruit, low cost and high value, right? Great one.
It's a no-brainer, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Pat and Christy, thank you so much, and we look forward to talking to you again. Again, I echo Ms. Clemens' comments. Thank you for the great work on this.
Well, thank you for the interest in the town, and I congratulate the new members of the ADA committee, because that's great that you've got folks that want to work on it.
On a personal note, just really quick, when Lynn mentioned the accessibility issue at the high school, I didn't have awareness of the accessibility concern until I was able to walk through it myself and understand a little bit more in detail. So thank you, Lynn, for pointing that out, and this kind of folds into this broader conversation.
Right.
So, so thank you all. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night. Great, thank you everybody for engaging in that important conversation. Next is a consideration and a vote of the Walker-Brook preliminary cost estimates for alternative construction options. Ms. Hutchinson, would you like to guide us through this?
Yes, I'm pleased that Rosalie stayed with the call so long.
Hi Rosalie, thank you.
And we've all gotten your memo with the three cost options. We have someone here in the audience representing the senior center, and you may not have heard, but speaking with some serious concerns about daylighting the channel, which is option 3. And so I will just, if I may, we can turn it over to Rosalie and have her go through the report as it exists, and then we can ask for any clarifications or fleshing out of any of the options. All three of the options are in graphic form in the report, which is also on our website. So with that, I would just turn it over to Ms. Starvish.
Thanks, Tom. I put together a few slides. Can everyone see my screen?
We can, thank you.
Okay, these are just a summary of the report that Tom is referring to. So I'm just going to provide an overview of the three options that were presented, and then including, some pros and cons of each, and then show what our cost opinions were on those. So the first option, which we're referring to as PC1, so this option would be to replace the existing culvert that conveys Walker Brook from High Street down to Main Street, to replace that culvert with a larger pipe. So that would mean removing the old culvert and reconstructing it with a newer, bigger pipe. And so the graphic that's shown here, that the existing alignment is shown along the purple line, and that's also where the proposed culvert would go. In final design, that alignment might shift in order to accommodate existing infrastructure to try to avoid any unnecessary impacts. But in general, we would remove the old pipe and put in a new one. So that's PC1. So PC2 would be to allow the existing culvert, the existing pipe, to stay in place. So that would be the red line that's shown on the graphic. But then we would add a second pipe. So we'd be increasing the capacity by adding a new pipe. So the purple line is the new pipe. So this new construction would follow existing right-of-way. When you get down to High Street, there may be a couple of options that we would have to explore in terms of how to reconnect that pipe back into Walker Brook downstream of High Street. So that is the second option, PC2, and then the third, PC3. This one, again, we would keep the existing Walker Brook culvert in place, and then we would convey higher flows, or I should say actually the opposite. So we would construct a new channel, an open channel, in that property where the senior center is located, as shown on the blue line. And then that would go into a new culvert, which would follow the alignment that's shown with the purple line there on the graphic. So that part of it is somewhat similar to option PC2. And so what would happen with this new open channel is that we would construct a structure in High Street that would convey normal flow into the open channel, but then when you had a larger storm event, those higher flows would then be diverted to go into the existing Walker Brook culvert that is left in place. And then in our report, on this next slide here, we had put together a chart kind of trying to convey in a, at a glance fashion, the pros and cons of these different options. I wanted to, I think maybe I'll start by saying that PC3 is, the two items there that PC3 meets that the other options don't meet are the ability to provide some level of detention, which can slow the flow so that when you are discharging at the bottom of Walker Brook, you're minimizing the potential for adverse impacts with higher peak flows during a flood. And also the channel provides water quality and habitat benefits that the other options can't provide. I also wanted to mention with these options that the existing culvert that's there, especially in the section where it goes into the backyards along Glennon Avenue, there's some question as to the condition of that portion of the culvert. And so if the culvert is left in place, we recommend exploring options to reinforce the culvert by lining it. And so with either PC2 or PC3, with that existing culvert left in place behind Glennon Ave, if we do line it, then that'll provide benefits in terms of potential structural deficiencies or future maintenance. If the culvert is left in place to be used and you still get flow going through there and we don't do anything, there's a risk of failure along that culvert over time. Are there any questions so far?
Great, thank you for going over those slides. I'm going to open it up to Ms. Mitchell. I know you wanted to talk about this at the beginning. Anything, any new comments or questions?
Yes, I
Yeah.
certainly do.
Yeah.
I have the colored version of option 3.
Okay.
Okay, you may not be seeing that.
Can you hold on for one second? Rosalie, can you hear Ms. Mitchell okay, or?
Yeah, it's maybe the slide up here is showing what she's referring
go
I
to.
have it in my hand.
Okay.
What you're seeing there.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. As part of the original building committee, your open water is cutting through all the underground utilities, the gas line, the power line, and the optical to the charger. So your wonderful open spot is going to disrupt all those. As you come into the extra one that you're digging up, the one that's red and white, at the end of the blue line, you're coming into the proposed area where 5 or 6 building lots were when they took the school down. That was part of the condition of removing the school. And you could sell those appropriate lots, and in the middle, it would be a great place to put a fire, police, community building that's handicapped accessible. And if you take a look at what you're digging up, if you continue down that dotted red line, you're disrupting the entire Glennon Avenue street with that new piece. You're not going through those people's backyards like it exists. You're digging up the entire street. And I would say your first option to go with the original plan and put in a properly sized culvert to get in it, because I'm aware that it narrows as you go through it. It gets, and Tom Callahan will tell you exactly how it narrows, having traveled through it. So I believe your dollar figure is off because you're not figuring out what the value of that property is and why it was designed that way after they took the school down. And you wouldn't need an elevator to get into the police station. You could walk into the fire department or other emergency places. You own the land. You don't have to buy it. And we have nice parking already. We don't need to worry about parking. And if you put nice small houses in there, right next to the senior center, I bet there'd be a lot of people that would sell their big house and say, hey, this is perfect. I'm safe. It's right next to the senior center. And there is an exercise yard that you would cut off with the brook. Now, I'm 73 years old. I only know 3 times that it's flooded through that property. So that big ugly scar you're trying to put in there would be a weed patch. It's not pretty. It's going to disrupt what's there. And it's not that much difference in price if you figure the value of the building lots that you would be destroying. And you're not digging up all of Glennon Avenue.
Okay, great, thank you. Pat?
A while back, when there was some discussion previously about this, was also mosquito control. Because a lot of times when that gets down to just a trickle, that's when you're going to have pretty much out of control mosquito catching.
Great point, thank you, Pat.
And how do you mow it?
Okay, great. Mr. Bishop?
Yeah, I was on the Dalton Junior High committee to knock the building down, and like Maureen said, those lots were there for a reason. I mean, it was designed for that reason. I'm also on the Conservation Commission. I understand the opening of the channel, but I totally disagree with this at this point because, number one, I don't see any wildlife habitat in that short space. And number two, you're going to have the liability there, kids jumping in there or whatever else, and the mosquitoes. And Walker Brook's an intermittent stream. If this was a perennial stream, it'd be a whole different ballgame. But Walker Brook is dry probably in the summertime, probably 85% of the time. So it'd be a big waste. I am very much leaning towards option number 1 is our solution because it follows a track that's already there. And when I was on that committee with Jim Scalise pointed out to me, we found an old report that those pipes are so out of shape. Some of them go from 2 feet to 3 feet, and it's just a nightmare. And if we had a properly sized pipe, it would be fine. And the only other thing I'd really recommend is the outflow needs to be divided, because during high waters, we've been down to River Run, and that water backs up if you put too much out there at one time, so that's something that should be looked at also.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Okay.
Anyone else, board?
Was there additional presentation at all, or was that it? Just curious.
Yeah, I just have the table here that shows the costs that were presented. I think, as Patricia alluded to earlier, it's challenging these days to predict costs, so we have somewhat of a high contingency and an inflation factor here.
Do I recall we were under the gun for a date for some reason?
There was a grant deadline, but I'm not sure what the grant deadline status is on that.
Yeah, we're not gonna make this year's grant submission, which is unfortunate. There is an extra premium for having applied this year, but we just don't have the time. If I may...
Well, just go back to the question. So are we under a timeline to make a decision tonight?
Well, the GZA needs direction to know which version to go with. It's not, because we're not going to be able to apply this year.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an absolute need to make a final decision tonight, but it would be good to come to a preliminary decision and maybe ask some questions that can be answered in a couple of weeks.
So this is the assessment phase. Now we're going to say, okay, let's say PC1, by Mr. Bishop's recommendation, we say that would be our preferred, and GCA goes into more detail about PC1?
They would engineer that.
Engineer
yes.
that, okay. And then we'll be prepared for the grant next time.
Yes.
Okay.
So, if I can...
Yep.
Continue.
Does that help,
Yeah.
Mr. Sharp?
Yeah. In looking at this, and if the daylighting and future miniature golf course of Dalton, and that location is now off the table, I would actually argue for the second option, and going along Glennon Avenue, partly because it takes it out of people's backyards. It then becomes something that the town can access if it needs to. I think that going through people's backyards would be a nightmare in terms of rights of way, buying the rights of way, and maintaining the system if anything were to happen. So I would much rather see it all on public land.
Yeah, there will be disruption along Glennon Avenue to construct the pipe, but once it's there, it's underground, and it's not impacting the road, and that you'll get a new paved road out of it.
And there could be drainage directly into the pipe from Glennon Avenue too, isn't that right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
So it helps to drain that way. I also did some quick calculations. The grant that we would be getting, that we would be applying for next year, there's no guarantee that we're going to get this grant. Next year, it's a 75-25% grant. So for these figures, even though there's almost $1 million difference between PC2 and PC3, the difference in what we would spend is only about $225,000, because we're only paying 25% of the cost of the project. So that's another thing to keep in mind, and some of that can be done with in-kind services if the DPW help excavate, that sort of thing. So I don't want cost to be the final determinant here, but just because the difference would only be either 225,000 or less if you went with PC1.
On PC2, the red line there, would that be the new construction, the new pipe?
No, that's the existing.
The red line is the existing pipe. And the purple is the purple, like it looks like a purple and white dash. That would be the new pipe.
The existing pipe, yeah, does go through, was it 8 or 9 backyards at this point?
And it would be recommended in PC 2 or 3 to reline that portion behind the backyards, is that correct? Or the whole thing?
Yes. Yeah. Especially the portion behind the backyards and maybe the section that goes east to west there. But especially, I mean, the portion behind the backyards, if it's just more of a headache in the future if there's a failure, because then, you know, you would have to coordinate with the landowner at that time. But if it's lined, then it lowers the risk of failure, and it'll keep it operational for a longer period of time.
Okay. And the relining is not part of these cost estimates here, is that correct?
We did include an estimate for that.
Oh, okay.
But the whole problem is that that's the section that's giving us the most problem because the pipe narrows there, is that right?
Yeah, so the relining will reduce the capacity of the existing pipe, but at least it will help to stabilize it structurally. So we'd have to make up for that capacity in the new pipe.
Okay, I'm reading.
Right, because you're doing both in that.
Yes.
So PC3 is the only cost estimate that includes the relining, not PC2?
No, PC2 does as well.
Okay, it's not clear on the report, it just says PC3.
Okay. That might be a typo that we need to correct, but we did account for that in PC2 as well.
That's good to know.
Yes, it also it does say add second drainage culvert from High Street to Main Street.
Okay.
But it's also beyond Main Street. You show it on the map so that there's 2 outlets on both PC2 and PC3.
Okay, I'm just looking at discussion and recommendations, and it just says the estimated cost of laying approximately 1,200 linear feet of culvert was included in total project cost for PC3, period.
Yeah, I think that's because it's the context of that paragraph is ultimately our focus was on PC3 in that paragraph, so I think that's why it's stated that way.
And that's your recommendation, your firm's recommendation is PC3?
Well, yeah, we presented that as the the lowest cost, and because there's the option to provide some detention with that channel portion, that kind of bumps it up. However, I think that all 3 options are feasible, and it really is the town's decision, as to what is best for the town.
The PC3 concerns me not only because of Ms. Mitchell's comments, but also Mr. Bishop's insight as well. So that's very concerning. So I'm looking at PC 1 or 2.
I can go with 1 or 2.
That's what I was going to ask you, is if you kind of look at PC 1 and 2,
It makes
Mr.
sense
Hutchinson's
to come down
comments
the
of
street
PC
where it's
2.
on public land, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dr. Irwin. Yeah.
On the pipe sizes for PC1 and PC2, what are you looking at? What is the current pipe size? What would you be planning on increasing that to? And what would be the second pipe that you'd run in PC2?
Did you get that?
Yeah, the pipes would be at least a 60-inch, but probably larger than that. I think we did an analysis with
Rosalie, did you say 16, 1/6?
No, 60, like 5 feet.
I was gonna say 16,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Our analysis showed value in that size, but I think we could do better with larger sizes, and we didn't get in detail regarding the fact that the capacity of the existing pipe would actually be decreased with the lining. So we'd have to, in our design process, once we select an alternative, we would evaluate that more closely.
Okay.
What kind of volumes are you talking about per hour that you're hoping to move through the piping system, and at what speed?
Was the volume, is that what I heard?
The volume and at what speed?
At peak,
How much rain are you anticipating you're going to have to handle per hour through the piping system? And at what speed are you designing this thing for? How many feet per second of water speed?
Well, we were looking at, I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head, but we were looking at improving, the amount of overtopping that could occur at High Street, and showing that currently you can get overtopping in a 25-year design event, but that with the improvements you would increase that to a 50-year.
I think if Maureen, she said 3 floods, and that's handled that one pipe is handled it for 3 times. And now we're going to add another 5-foot pipe in there. I'd be good with number 2. I'd go with number 2.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the board?
So when would we be planning to do this work, regardless of which plan we?
So if I can
if we get a grant.
If I can say the timeline in my mind, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we missed the grant opportunity, so now we'll be going to engineering, based upon the recommendation tonight. We'll go to full engineering design, right? And are we covering that in the budget, or is that a budget issue?
We would need to plan for the 25%.
For the design? I'm not talking about the grant, I'm just talking about the work for GZA.
No, GZA is contracted to do the design.
Okay, so then we go to the design
We'll have
phase.
the engineering done.
Yep, so we go to the engineering phase, and then from that, then we go to the grant, which would be later in calendar year 23,
Yeah, typically end of summer,
end of summer,
early fall.
and then probably hear about the grant by the end of the calendar year, or typically?
Yeah,
Okay.
it varies. It could go January, February.
So then we're to 24 for construction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good.
Well,
Depending.
again, if we get the grant, I worked on a project similar to this in a town I worked in before, and it took us 4 tries to get the grant.
Oh, sure, yeah, it's a
So
lot
that
of
was 4
ifs
years.
and then thens and things like that, but generally,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, because I think that's kind of.
It all depends on the benefit cost analysis.
Yeah, that too.
I'll make a motion to go with PC2.
Okay.
I'll second it.
There's a motion, a second, any further discussion by the board?
Well, even though it's a higher cost of the 3, I think overall it does provide
I think
the balance, the
Mitchell,
benefits
she
that
brought
are
up a good
needed.
point. When we did take that down, we were talking about selling those pieces of property. And it also gives us a piece of property in the future if we decide to do the town hall,
Yep.
police department, whatever, we have that there.
Yeah,
Makes it a less
And it
expensive
has
option.
substructure, they put, I don't know if it's sewer or water lines are already underneath.
They're already there, yes. Yep, they're there.
yeah, I think preserving the future opportunities of that land as we originally intended would be desirable, and I don't like the projected 30% contingency, 7% inflation added to that number either, but if we can get the grant, assuming that that's part of the piece of this, we're at 25%? We're on the
Yeah.
hook for 25%? It is what it is. It's infrastructure that does need to be replaced or taken care of otherwise, so
Okay.
I can support that.
We're in board discussion right now, sorry, Dr. Irwin. Great, thank you, Mr. Esco. Any further discussion by the board? We got a motion and a second. Okay, hearing none, all in favor for PC2?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Rosalie, thank you so much for all the great work by you and your firm, and so now we have a recommendation to move forward, and we look forward to seeing the design, and we'll welcome the community back and look at that design in a lot more detail, and then go from there. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We'll get moving.
I'm not done yet.
No, I know that.
Thank you, Rosalie.
Thank you.
Let's see.
There we go.
There you go. I'm ready to go to this.
No, I didn't say that.
Up to you. Up to you. Town Hall construction update, Mr. Atkinson, and Mr. Pettit here as well.
Yes, well, we sent out, received, reviewed, and have accepted bids for both the asbestos abatement and the alterations, which is actually putting it back the way it is now. And I think our building and ground superintendent is going to tell you about it, unless you want me to tell him about it.
Well, I was just gonna go over our moves and all that, so I thought you were doing the update
Oh,
on
yeah.
the contractors.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go through that. I actually have it as part of my update, but I'll be happy to give it now. There's plenty of information. The winning asbestos abatement bid was from Abide Inc. of East Long Meadow for $243,580. The winning alterations bid, which is restoring the ceiling while adding some sheetrock to provide durable air sealing, was from Cape Cod Builders Inc. for $263,000 plus $29,000 for the two alternates we gave. Sheetrock to provide a solid air seal and sheetrocking the two third-floor offices in need of that. That's $292,000 for alterations, which includes the subbids of Collins Electrical of Chicopee for $65,500 and Rocky's Acoustics for the ceiling tiles, also of Chicopee, for $36,190. I'll note that Cape Cod Builders got rave reviews from Lennox for their work on the town hall there, the restoration there. That makes the total for the construction work $535,580. The original estimate of the prep work, including moving, etc., was $150,000 for a total estimate of $685,580, though, which is underneath our authorization. Though there will be some additional expenses, including bank rent, additional bank rent, as the initial bank lease is up in January. This means that although the bids came in within budget, which our architect said we should definitely count as a win in this day and age, and as you heard from Pat Mullen, we have virtually no contingency funds. So we hope the work proceeds smoothly. The building and ground superintendent and I will, of course, keep you updated closely as we proceed.
Great, thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. Pat, anything to add?
Yeah, like Alex had said, I'll be watching the contractors very closely and making sure everything goes smoothly, kind of like what I did with the high school during the demolition, just making sure everything was done correctly. I'll be overseeing the daily operations of the construction and coordinating and making sure all the contractors are in on time to get things moving. And the sooner we get it done, the sooner we can get out of the leases. So that's it for the construction part. I was just going to update on the people moving.
Pause for a moment. Any questions on the construction?
So the bids do not include any contingency?
The budget does not, we've used up our contingency in the bids at this point. We were definitely hoping the asbestos part would come in lower. We got two bids, one for $243 and the other was for $290. So we took the competitive one, which was maybe $100,000 more than we were hoping for. But out of the two bids, that was the low one.
Yeah, I see.
We can kind of protect or put some bubble wrap around a little bit of the opera balance too, if we need some contingency dollars to
I
move
suppose
that.
that's a back pocket solution.
Yep. Mr. Pettit? Yep. Where it moves?
Yeah, so what we've done now is moved more people around and out of the building, so the Board of Health, Building Inspector, Historic Commission, and the Town Planner offices are now over at the Kittredge House up on the second floor. The Town Manager and the Secretary have now moved over to the Bank Building where others are at right now. And we are planning to move the financial team on October 21st out of the building, so that will just leave the clerks through the election period here, and that is it. So as you can see, some of the stuff is being cleaned out of the building, so time-wise, everything is staying on time to be ready for the construction when it starts.
Great, thank you. And that was I think there was a, just for the board, I've been collaborating with Ms. Hutchinson and Mr. Pettit on this as we cut, especially around the election season. So a decision was made to leave the town clerks and the election office stable through the election process and then move it after the fact. And then the construction team will move pretty quickly within, thinking like, in the request it's 45 days, but we think they can get it done in a month. So that's why Pat's going to be watching very closely, move that ball along, so we can try and wrap it up right before the holidays, so we're not then exposed to other winter elements and things of that nature. So we'll just watch that as we continue going. So thank you, Pat and Tom.
One last note, just with the clerk's office being over here, we did set up, which I think will be in your notes at the end, that there is a new ballot drop box that has been installed on the parking lot facing side of that bank building where most of the town hall employees are at right now.
Great, great. We should send that. Okay, great, excellent. Thank you both. Any other questions from the construction update from the board? Okay, hearing none. Select board recommendations on the Wacona track request. This was an item requested by Mr. Boyle at last meeting. What he was suggesting is that the board have a conversation and take a position on the new track prior to our town meeting. The vote that we take tonight, the vote that we take tonight is not binding. It's just a recommendation of the select board to the residents when they do come to the town meeting, that they're just more informed about the request for the new track. I was hoping to have Mr. Boyle open that up, but I will. I guess I'll just start. You guys can jump in. And so the history of the track is that it was originally built. I'm going off memory here, so so check my facts, okay, along the way. It was originally built in 1980, so more than 30 years ago. Last time it was resurfaced was 20 years ago. The current condition of the track is such that if your spikes hit, there's a lot of bare spots, and if your spikes hit that spot, you could slip and fall. So it's a safety issue. And so with that, the school building committee and the superintendent working within the already authorized $72 or $71.8 million that was voted for the new school. There's $2 million left of that already authorized debt that they could access. If the 7 towns have to unanimously approve it, so far the town of Beckett approved it by town vote. Peru approved it by no action, so they did not have a town vote. The select board decided to take no action, and the Mass General Law, you take no action, you approve the request automatically. And the rest of the towns are taking a town vote. And so, yeah, I think there's 2 perspectives of this. One is that the original debt exclusion vote was based on a certain scope. The track was not part of that scope. And now really what they're asking is to expand that original scope of work to include the track and access the debt that was already authorized. The debt authorization predicted a tax rate for that 30-year debt exclusion, which was whatever that number was. If they did not do the track, I think the number that Sandy used was 10 cents of every 400,000 is like impacts the tax rate. That would not come back to us. The tax would for the debt exclusion would just go down a little bit, right? Add the track, we're halfway back up to what was originally authorized in debt exclusion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's an opportunity that the Building School Committee, congratulate them on good financial controls, $2 million balance in that previously debt authorized, asking the 7 towns to access that same debt authorization for the track. So, any other comments on that, Mr. Bishop?
It seems to make sense to go ahead with it the way it is. But if we had to go outside and go separate for a loan, wouldn't it be higher with interest rates now? Would we get the same, if we put it in the original scope, do we get the same interest as the school has been bonded out?
Well, it would still be the school's borrowing.
Right.
Presumably, they would still come to us with.
But if they had to go separate and apply for a separate loan outside that money, wouldn't they be subject to a higher interest rate with the rates what they are now?
Yeah.
Great question. The last part of debt authorization, they haven't gone out to bond yet, so they're going with today's rates in that last piece of bond, which is like $6 million a bond.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit higher than the original, just because of the timing of that bond request. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's only one argument that I've heard for waiting that has struck me as potentially valid, and that is that if the school were to redesign the new track and have it be more of a repair of the current track instead of a complete reconstruction, because apparently the base is still good, that could end up being a cheaper project. They don't have those numbers because that estimate was not provided, so we don't have that data point, as our chair would say.
Yeah.
That datum.
There is part of this that concerns me, and I'll be quite frank. And I don't want to be hip. I've been evaluating this a long time just because I've been so involved in the schools. But if I go back to the original school process and the school building, there was a time and place where they were thinking about geothermal heating for an additional $2 million for the cost. And the room filled up with probably about, in that geothermal vote, the building committee voted almost unanimously. I think it was 2 people who voted no out of the 18 or whatever they had on the committee. When that broke, I think roughly 40 people came back to the next committee and said, no, we're not going to vote for the new school if you have the geothermal. So I think about the track in that aspect and go, good opportunity with the $2 million, but do I say no and go and separate it? I don't know, because it's such a small dollar amount. But I just don't know. And to the most recent issue about the handicap accessibility, that was a battle to get them to approve a push button door.
A tiny dollar amount.
And I'm not going to vote on a track until I address handicap accessibility.
Okay.
So tonight what you'll hear from me is I'm going to abstain because I also believe it's not our position, it's the voters' position to approve or not approve.
I totally agree.
Well, that being said, the whole school building itself, we sat here and we gave our recommendation as a board that we supported the school. So we did do that.
I don't see anything wrong with the town voters knowing where members of the select board stand, or at least the select board as a group, decision-making body, stand on it. I think I've gone back and forth on this. I really wanted to congratulate the building committee and all the people who contributed to them coming in $2 million under budget, and that's a victory that should be celebrated. But I also can see the need for the track and having that school be a full facility. That track's a part of that picture. It really is.
Yeah.
And so I think for those reasons, I can support this because the original amount of borrowing was a higher amount authorized than will end up being, even with the track added in, right?
Here's the thing. Say they came back right on budget and they said we have this issue with the track, we got to fix it.
They've known they've had the issue with the track for years.
Right.
This is an opportunity because of the budget.
Right.
Sure, but yeah, they've known this for years.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if we want to vote as a board or if we want to just individually say it, but I definitely think we need to make it known. I mean, it puts people on the hot spot, but so be it.
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Boyle's not here tonight.
Yeah.
So, I'll for one, if you want to make the motion, I'll make the motion as a board, or if you want to do it individually, say I support it. I'll make the motion as a board. I make a recommendation that we support the resurfacing or redoing of the track for Wacona High School.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion is second, any discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a victory coming under budget. They're not gonna spend all of the surplus. It doesn't increase the amount of borrowing that was authorized. Will still come in less. It helps complete the facility, even though it wasn't part of original scope. It helps round out the full facility in this brand new school. And I don't see any reason why we should oppose that.
I support it even if they came in at budget. I would
Okay,
still support it.
well, that's the thing, is if it came in at budget and then they asked for more, that's where I would probably have an issue with it. But because we're under budget, I really don't see what the problem is.
There's one major missing element in their pitch is a maintenance plan. There's no maintenance plan being provided. So it's a resurface every 5 or 6 years that they have to commit to.
And I think we made that clear to them at that meeting too. So
Yeah, we made it clear a couple of times, and I'm asking the superintendent for a letter of intent for our town meeting, just to put on the record. I think that would be very wise of them to do that.
When is the town meeting?
October 19th?
Thank you.
Does the school have a stabilization fund that they could accumulate money to do that repair every 5 years?
I don't know what
They were
their
talking about doing something like that, yeah.
Yeah, they should.
You said the
for
18th or the 19th?
October 19th?
I think it's the 19th, right?
It's yeah, that's what October 19th, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, Mr. Bishop.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it's a needed thing for the safety. As a member of the 7-town advisory board, I mentioned this at one of our last meetings, we met, the 7 towns got together pretty quickly to give feedback to the superintendent, to Greg Bueno. And initially, we were in a position saying, well, celebrate the $2 million, wrap up the project, and move forward. But then the safety issue came into play, and we took a tour of the track, and you can see the bare spots. There is a safety issue, no question about it. But the condition of the track, to me, I didn't see much of a difference from last time I saw the track last year to this year. So I think there's been this history, so it's an opportunity to leverage those dollars to go address the issue, which is okay too. Okay, there's a motion and a second to support. Mr. Bishop.
Yeah. Once again, Tom, the tax rate, if this goes through, there's very little effect on the tax rate, correct? It's like 10 or 15 cents or a cent?
Yeah, that's roughly what we calculated.
Okay.
Which is $44,000 a year, right?
That would be 10 cents.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Motion second to support the track, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions, I'm going to abstain, objection, or oppose. Okay. So 3 ayes, 0 opposed, 1 abstention.
1 absent.
And 1 absent, yeah, thank you. Okay, great. Town manager update, Ms. Hutchinson?
Yes, aside from the big news about the town hall renovations, all the bid numbers, I've been working with the Finance Committee on the motions and explanations for the upcoming special town meeting and preparing some longer-range planning items, including a policy for free cash and some longer-term staffing issues. I've learned that an estimated construction cost for an additional sewer line on Dalton Division Road is $369,000. Added to that would be the cost of engineering. At 10% of the construction cost, that would be $37,000, or a total of $406,000. For 14 connections, that would make the cost of each connection about $29,000.
And just to sorry, Ms. Hutchinson, if I can pause you there for a moment, just to refresh our board and our audience, is that's a request that came in from residents to Mr. Boyle to evaluate that for sewer connections.
Yes.
So then those numbers answer that question, so then we'll come back and evaluate that later on.
Today was Town Planner Grant McGregor's last day. He did an enormous amount of very good work for the town, and we wish him well in his future endeavors. Alyssa and I have taken over his email and duties until we hire another town planner. We have posted ads and are continuing to get the word out. If anyone knows any town planners looking for work, let me know. Thank you. Other than that, I've been managing the regular work of the office and keeping all the balls rolling that have been set in motion, but I have no particular milestones to report.
Okay, great. Any questions from Mr. Hutchinson? Future agenda items, Ian?
I got one just from walking in, and I had been approached probably about 6 months to 9 months ago about, there used to be some big light out front that people were, that lit up the out front, the outside. Bob, do you remember that?
Yeah.
And just walking in tonight, Bob and I were walking in, it's really dark out there, so we really should look into some outside lighting around the town hall.
Okay. Mr. Hutchinson, can you just take that with Mr. Pettit? Or do we need a board
No,
discussion?
no, I
Okay.
just wanted, no.
Any other future agenda items? I had one, but I'm losing it. Sorry. 1 second. Oh, yeah, no, I'm good. Okay. Mr. Esco, you good?
Yeah, for now.
Okay. Any items not anticipated 48 hours before the meeting? Remarks of the select board. I have one. Anybody else? Okay. I was contacted by Jennifer Mulholland, who is one of the parents involved with the Dalton Cub Scouts Pack 42. They had reached out to have asked for volunteers so the kids in Pack 42, ages 10 to 11, can learn a little bit more about town government. And so I'd recommended to her, well, the perfect time now is our town meeting that we have coming up. So I offered to meet with the Pack 42 from 6:30 to 7 o'clock. If anybody would like to join me, happy to have you join me. I'm going to structure just a general introduction of like what the select board does, and what the town manager does, and general town government, high level for a 10 or 11-year-old child or student in the Cub Scouts that's interested in learning, but highlighting voting and the importance of participating in voting. So then the kids will be able to see our town hall or a special town meeting and voting in action at the end of the day on these topics. And I'd also like to, and then also do a little Q&A for the kids to then engage. So anybody who wants to join me, happy to have you. And then if there's no objection, I'd also like to ask the kids to present the colors for the town meeting, special town meeting, if that's cool. Does that work? Okay.
Works fine.
All right.
That's
So
great.
I was just the other day that she reached out. So happy to help with these kids. Okay. Any other remarks for the select board? Oh, that's what I just publicly thanking our Department of Public Works and Bud Hall, our town manager, Dalton Division. I know it's just like a initial kind of run over until we get to 27, 28. But boy, it's nice driving down that road without a pothole. Yeah, it just looks great, and I don't want to like say it looks super great for somebody to go, well, you don't need that money in 27, 28 for reconstruction. Yes, we do. But it is a good work done by all on that road. So. Yeah.
So all the road construction done for this year, or are we going to be doing like Crane Avenue and the rest of them on the list?
The rest of the projects that were approved are scheduled for the spring.
Spring. Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Resco?
Oh, I'd just like to say that this came up earlier, but I'm very happy to hear about the push button door solution at Wapona Regional. That's very, very good news. Yeah.
If there's no other remarks, I'll move to the announcements. Annual car permits, bag stickers, and recycling-only car permits are available for purchase at the transfer station and on the town's website. Town offices update. The town manager and executive assistant have moved to the old Berkshire Bank basement at 488 Main Street. The health agent, building inspector, and town planner have moved to the Kittredge House at 444 Main Street. And the town of Dalton currently has the following job opportunities: highway mechanic, building and grounds assistant, and the town planner. If interested, please visit the town's website or call the town manager's office for more information. There are numerous committees and boards with vacancies. Please see the town website for more information or reach out to the town manager's office. The town has installed a ballot box for the general election located on the back side of the bank building at 488 Main Street.
This is very important. Trick or treat in Dalton will take place on Monday, October 31st from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Costumes.
The 8th annual changing of the flag ceremony will take place on Friday, November 4th, starting at 11:30 a.m. at the Dalton Senior Center. See the town website for more information. Next meeting is scheduled to take place next Selectboard meeting is take place on Monday, October 24th, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the Senior Center with an option for remote participation. And with that, have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion second, any discussion?
Were you gonna announce the town, special town meeting as part of announcements, or, since I noticed it's not there, so.
Yeah, no,
Just
absolutely,
for
great
people
point.
who may be watching.
So the special town meeting is October 19th at Wacona Regional High School, correct, Mr. Hutchinson? Wacona
Yes.
Regional High School, October 19th, beginning at 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
And the warrant is published on our website, right? Okay. I think the warrant's on our website. It will be soon, if not.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, we know.
Yes. All right, thank you for that reminder. So we have a motion to adjourn, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries, and good night, Dalton.